I don't personally have anything to do with the price of cat food, but I will pass on your feedback. Good morning and welcome to Moresco Breeze. How may we serve you today? That's a funny expression, isn't it? How may we serve you? Are supermarkets a service? It doesn't feel like it. I mean, market is right there in the title. But then people certainly would starve without someone to provide them with food. Wait, we are getting ahead of ourselves, aren't we? Oh, hold on one second. Yes, madam, aisle 3, next to the yogurts. You know, despite actually working for a supermarket, I am, for one reason or another, attracted to video games about supermarkets. The last 2 supermarket-based games that I played created something of a conflict in me and made me ask some uncomfortable questions about the purpose of a supermarket and why different game developers represent them in such different ways. I am due a break in a second, so let's hit the vending machines and talk supermarket video games. So we should probably talk about the 2 games I will be comparing in this video. So spoilers are ahead for Discounty and Supermarket Simulator. First up, we have the recently released Discounty from new Danish developers Crinkle Cut Games, which approaches supermarket management via a 2-dimensional narrative RPG style reminiscent of games like Stardew Valley. As well as running a franchised food shop in the rural town of Blomkust, you also must build relationships with others and solve communal issues. And this interconnectivity with your neighbours is the beating heart of the game. Supermarket Simulator is the other game, and is exactly what it sounds like. It simulates the tasks, challenges and choices involved in running a food retail shop, albeit in more of an urban setting than Discounty, and with more of a focus on the minutiae and optimization of a modern business. Now, these 2 approaches are clearly visually very different, but what I'm more interested in are the ideologies and intentions behind their design. Let's get into our first point of difference: time. Yes, I thought we would start with a nice simple conceptual framework like time. In Discounty, as in life, time acts as a sort of antagonistic factor, constantly ticking away, testing our ability to achieve our goals, whilst we also have to open the shop on time, manage our stock levels, and get home before midnight, at which point we will collapse where we stand. This statement is rated R for relatable. You have to fit your relationship building, recycling runs, poster campaigns, side missions, and exploring around your responsibilities, and that pressure to spend your time effectively creates some interesting dilemmas. If optimization is your kink, you can spend your time before and after your shop closes moving shit around and trying to find a layout that makes replenishment easier, increases available stock space, and allows for the optimal placement of category or supplier specific sales boosters. Or you can discover why packs of rats are coalescing all round Blomkust, why the local crystal seller has a culty shrine in the middle of the forest, and why the forest has been sealed off by the authorities. There are many small mysteries in Blomkust, and exploring your surroundings and the stories of the locals is a rewarding practice. However much you may want to focus on just the shopkeeping or just the narrative and community aspects, you will ultimately need to do both. And because of the time constraints, you will be, as my dad would say, running around like a blue-arsed fly. Supermarket Simulator, however, does time a little differently. While Supermarket Simulator does have a clock that runs throughout the day, it has a distinct difference from that of Discounty. In Discounty, you would get up in your trailer home at 6 AM. The clock starts ticking. You might check the paper, say hi to your aunt, try and tick off a couple of personal or communal tasks, visit a local supplier to pick up additional stock, pop to the hardware store for some additional shelving, and then maybe rush to the shop before 9 AM, risking the wrath of old Mrs. Anderson if you're not there on time. In Supermarket Simulator, however, you simply wake up at 8 AM at work, and the clock doesn't start until you flip the sign and open the shop. Did you catch that? You can pick when the clock starts running. What this means is that you can spend as much time as you want optimizing your shop, doing your admin, checking your prices, ordering stock, etc. So there is no real pressure on you to get things done. Once the shop is open, time ticks along in much the same way that it does in Discounty, until 9 PM, at which point time once again stops moving and waits for you to click End the Day, which then skips you to the next morning via a sales summary screen. Or you can just not click it and get an unlimited amount of time where you can do whatever you need to, including leaving the shop open if you so choose and getting more and more of those lovely customers. It is perhaps a curious oversight from a game that is so focused on the minutiae of running a realistic food retail shop that time is treated as such an exploitable extra. But that is because the focus is on profit, expansion, optimization, and other important businessy tycoon game stuff. Discounty, however, wants you to constantly think about how you spend your time, providing a neat contrast and a point of comparison. But to what end? Well, let us see if we can find out in the next section. Customers. As we just covered, a day in Supermarket Simulator likely takes a lot more time to play through than Discounty, given the unlimited prep and recovery time and the focus on purely making the most profit possible. We do that, of course, by selling things to people. What people, you might ask? Well, Jesus wept! Sorry madam, you just startled me there. Yeah, the customer models in Supermarket Simulator very much feel like they come as part of a content package for Unity or something. And despite there being a fair amount of variety in the available customers, the animations are... yeah, they are pretty much the same for everyone that you come across. They don't have any dialogue options or reactive animations. Instead, they all go about their own business, pretty much ignoring you and each other until they reach the checkouts, at which time they patiently fall into line in a silent retail acquiescence. You can find these silent souls roaming the admittedly quite impressive streets outside of your shop. And I spotted one sad soul waiting for service outside of an empty eatery, gesturing to a server that only they could see. It is interesting that they added in the behaviour and animations for a character to sit at outdoor tables and gesture for service, as if there is perhaps an intention to increase the realism of the customers in this game, but certainly they are very simplistic at the moment. As it is, they emerge from hotels and random doorways and walk around with glassy-eyed expressions until stumbling upon your store. And they will do the same tomorrow. The same empty expression, the same silent existence, the same hollow routines. Conversely, Discounty has a small cast of fairly well realised characters, many of whom have visitable homes and workplaces, routines beyond their interactions with you, and a bunch of opinions and perspectives that fill out your understanding of Blomkast and the surrounding areas. These characters come to your store with a predetermined shopping list, but much like me, they can be influenced into buying impulse items through clever use of promotional materials and shop layouts, and they will react to the absence of stock or the dirtiness of your floors, much as a real customer might. Discounty's design philosophy is to give each character a life beyond their value as a customer, and this sits in direct opposition to Supermarket Simulator, in which the customer exists only to shop, literally appearing out of thin air and moving around a city with only one destination. Customers exist to serve the economy in Supermarket Simulator, whereas in Discounty, the economy is a living, breathing thing that exists to service its constituents. Let's explore these concepts more as we move on to the next section. Throughout the course of playing Discounty, you see how the growth of your intrepid little supermarket affects the lives around you, and similarly, how the effect on the local economy can also have an impact on your environment. Indeed, a large section of the game is spent investigating a number of these impacts, like the discoloration of nearby bodies of water, the appearance of mysterious forest fogs, an urban rat epidemic, and declining fish populations. We also see the very human impacts of someone being sacked from their job, and a troubled teenager being given an opportunity to join your staff. We see communities coming together to challenge state bureaucracy, to rally against economic decline, and yes, even to protest capitalist overreach when your aunt tries to expand the supermarket right over a treasured community landmark. You discover the history of previously significant derelict buildings, such as the fish auction house at the docks, the shuttered, cursed but curious shop, or the numerous empty houses that litter the local area. You learn of divorces, local superstitions, mystical beliefs, business rivalries, and political intrigue. And it is this rich tapestry of all these elements that helps remind us that a community is more than just its economy. It is the people and their relationships that make a place what it is. Discounty is a game that attempts to celebrate people and the idea of community. And whilst you primarily engage with the locals as customers first and foremost, by the end of the game, they will be as much neighbours as anything else. Supermarket Simulator has a very different approach, and it becomes clear from a very early stage that the philosophical approach to the game world has had a lot less thought than Discounty, as indicated by the clearly AI generated art on the Steam page. I mean, look at the size of the hands on this poor soul. And this somewhat lazy approach to world building continues into the graphical assets used by the game. The city area is fairly well put together, with several blocks all around your shop featuring a variety of different buildings, businesses and vehicles. Whilst it's hard not to be impressed by the environment as you walk around, or indeed skateboard as I prefer to do in game, it quickly becomes clear that this neighbourhood is little more than a well-realised movie backdrop. People walk around, but they have no personality, no goals beyond their relevance to the shop. They have the same animations, same speed of travel, and the same blank expression. They can't converse with you, they can't react to what you do beyond shop-related actions, and the only thing they can communicate is their opinions on pricing or product availability. The growth and expansion of your shop doesn't seemingly affect the wider world, beyond the number of customers that might show up, and there is certainly never any examination as to what the appearance of a successful and fast-growing food retail business would have. Pollution, traffic fumes, lack of parking, staff hires and noise are all issues that might be factored in when considering the impact of your mini-mart empire. But the game has little interest in exploring that aspect of reality. That is perhaps not surprising given the admitted differences in stated scope of the two games we're examining. But the inclusion or omission of any particular element is still a conscious and creative choice, and therefore it is of interest to me. At this stage, I feel we should acknowledge that Supermarket Simulator is a single dev's project, so some of the choices made do perhaps reflect that reality. But given how far the game's functional side has progressed and the fact it is now available on console, I just feel like getting human created art or improving the depth of the game's world would certainly have been possible by this stage if that was considered a priority. But it clearly isn't. Food is something we all need to survive, yet we live in a society where it has been deemed appropriate to put the free market in control of its production, processing, and most pressingly in this case, its distribution. This creates a pressure where a society is obligated to make sure that the price of food never becomes too expensive for its people to access, lest it fail in its very reason for existing. That's right, folks. Contrary to most news networks and current affairs programs, I posit that societies should serve their people, rather than some abstract concept of the economy. I guess I'm just another radical leftist throwing out dangerous suggestions like governments shouldn't let people starve. That's not even communism, by the way. It's simply just having a half-decent safety net, which is the political equivalent of just not being a dick. Now, this safety net needs to exist because we all as a society have tacitly acknowledged that our current economic system allows/encourages employers to pay their employees less than they need to survive. This is not a controversial take. We have a progressive tax system in the UK for the same reason. People working and receiving benefits or working more than one job in order to earn enough to live is common enough that it's not a surprise when someone tells you, is it? Now, why am I harping on about all of this on a video about games set in supermarkets? Because that pressure I spoke of, that tension that exists between a profit-making food distribution system and people's need to eat, creates a scenario where crime is not only possible or even likely, but to some degree at least, inevitable. Now obviously, not all theft is based on necessity. Much like the aforementioned companies that steal from their workers by underpaying them versus the labour they produce, some people do steal for personal benefit. But let's be real, these are not high-value goods that will earn a lot of money for the thief. Supermarket theft is usually the domain of the desperate. There are not many making big bucks from nicking from Tesco is what I'm getting at. So when we then look at how crime is presented in a video game supermarket environment, it can potentially tell us a lot about the developer's views. Now, Discounty is a game that repeatedly emphasises that people don't act in a vacuum. They are affected by their environments, their relationships, and the hundreds of external pressures that are acting on us every day. It does this in a very simplistic fashion, of course. It is a cosy game after all, but each character in the main cast has an arc where they hold a view because of these pressures. crime in This County is mostly surface level, things like littering or vandalism, much of which is perpetrated by pretty much the only young person in the town, who does so acting out of loneliness, alienation and a lack of opportunity. Our time with angsty teen Chester teaches us that This County understands that most criminals are made, not born, and that the solution to some crime at least is merely understanding the person and their circumstance. In actual fact, most of the significant crime we experience in This County is corporate in nature, environmental damage and the like, or corruption in local government. Something class interests.
Something dark side.
This County correctly positions crime as a symptom of a wider issue and alerts us to the fact that the crimes affecting the largest number of people are often not the ones pursued by the media or indeed the police. It's almost as if the decision makers at the top of our state institutions and media corporations share some sort of interest in maintaining a justice system that focuses on crowd control and protecting property, as opposed to, say, white-collar crime. Weird, perhaps unsurprisingly, Supermarket Simulator has a somewhat different take on crime. Yeah, the first signal of how this was going to go was when I was looking for the tools that you can buy as a shop owner. You can buy a crate that allows you to move small quantities of stock easily, a hand scanner that shows stock levels and allows remote ordering, a very 21st century solution, meaning I don't have to memorise out of stock lines anymore. And wait, what is that? Crime is an inevitability in Supermarket Simulator. Though part of me was most amused when the game told me I can just turn crime off in the options menu. Each day, randomly selected dead-eyed customers come into your shop, walking that weird slouchy walk, and usually at least one of them will start doing an animation you haven't seen before, like some sort of Scooby-Doo capering villain. If they get to the doorway after having rifled through your various shelving units, they will speech bubble something along the lines of, "That was easy," and then peg it off up the road. Unless, of course, you catch them first, and demand that they hand over the stolen goods. Oh wait, there is no button for that. There is this, though. You can also outsource your surprisingly violent approach to shop security to this guy, who looks like every right-wing guy I have ever argued with on Facebook. So to sum up what we have learned so far, in Supermarket Simulator, crime is inevitable, sort of, and dissuaded using violence. Criminals are hit, they scream, they throw the lifted goods on the ground, and they run away. And the game is just like, yep, that's how you deal with crime. Ignoring why someone would steal 4 packs of eggs, there is remarkably little moral consideration given to whether the theft of a few items of food is justification for tooling someone up with a dangerous weapon. There is also zero reaction from other staff or customers to this violence. Now, me and you know that that's because this developer hasn't created the functionality for NPC awareness. But the effect on the player is that people appear tacitly okay with a shoplifter getting their head caved in and react with no more alarm than if someone had dropped a receipt. Now you might be thinking, it's an indie developer, they don't have the time and resources to code in that sort of detail. But they clearly felt that shoplifting was something they wanted enough in their game that they did code the following animations for suspicious behaviour. Animations for being hit with a bat complete with a screen react. The dropping of stolen products when hit. Multiple pieces of anti-theft kit. A security guard that will assault the shoplifter, pick up the dropped goods and put them back on the shelf. A shoplifter escape mechanic. A shoplifter exit line. By not coding bystander reactions, alternative approaches to the conflict, or making at least some acknowledgement that hurting someone that has stolen food isn't an equivalent act, it means that choices were made. And choices reveal intent, folks. Now then, we have spoken a bit already about the staff you can hire in Supermarket Simulator. For example, I have referenced the security guard you can hire that looks like the stereotypical bald sunglasses truck guy that appears in comment sections everywhere to shout that there are only 2 genders. You can hire multiple staff members as your store progresses, including checkout staff, customer service helpers that manage self-service tills and weighing scales, cleaners, shelf stackers, and the aforementioned security guys. They allow you to keep managing your store as it grows and begins encompassing online orders, a demand that outstrips your store's ability to supply without help. But they are very much viewed as functional tools, so it's a bit like playing a billionaire psychopath simulator where people are these conduits for function only. nameless, expressionless avatars for the fulfillment of your wants and needs, and very much nothing more. They do not have names. They are Cashier 1, Cashier 2, Security Guard 1, and so forth. They have no personality beyond the completion of their tasks. They are there when you arrive for work. They will be there until you choose to end the day with 0 breaks. I did in fact quickly work out that you can exploit the game somewhat, though to be fair it's an exploit capitalist employers have been using for decades. As mentioned earlier, the in-game clock runs until 9 PM every day, and then it stops and just says press enter to end the day. The day pretty much just carries on. You get more customers, the shelf stacker keeps replenishing, the till worker keeps scanning, and I keep earning. Are you ready for the exploitation part? Your staff get paid by the day. So if 9 PM effectively runs for 4 in-game hours, you have exploited their labour without recompense. Anyone that has worked retail or food service will have experienced the real-life version of this, which is the make sure you're at your post 15 minutes before your shift starts, and the oh, can you just close up before you go? If you don't, you're going to make everyone else have to work late, etc, etc. So like all the worst employers, Supermarket Simulator treats staff as automatons. You don't have to consider their needs, you click hire and fire at a whim and they arrive or are disposed of immediately, and to you at least, they don't even have names. There are no consequences for sacking staff other than initial hiring cost, and there is no downside portrayed for hiring and firing willy-nilly. So a little reminder, I guess, that the game is set in the US, land of the free and home of the perpetually exploited. Your staff in Supermarket Simulator are just cogs in the profit machine that enable you to grow. Because as we know, growth is all that matters, right? Right? Discounty has exactly 2 staff that you meet in your time. The first being Grace, who is hired to oversee the setup of the shop and your character's training, and then Chester, who is a problematic teen that is later hired to help out in the shop in an attempt to give his life purpose. Did you notice how these 2 characters have names and a little bit of character fluff? Grace is laid off early on by your Aunt Tella, and then you have to face them regularly, having effectively taken their job. And Chester? Well, Chester's backstory is a bit of a thing, but as the only young person in town and the son of 2 very stereotypically successful and financially motivated people, he begins to act out. These are no automatons, these are people, and your connections with them inform the game and mean that they are far more than just hired help. Workers are people too, folks. Now, all of this is not to say that the developer of Supermarket Simulator doesn't also believe that, but again, it's all about what was considered a priority, and the fact they use generative AI for their storefront artwork rather than pay an artist doesn't reflect well on them in this regard. In Discounter, you play as a fully customizable character, but one that is connected to the community from the off. You are introduced as Teller's niece or nephew, with Teller being a prominent part of Blomkast, and you quickly realise that being a business owner in a small town or village comes with a significant social responsibility. Despite Teller ultimately being the actual owner, you are the face of Discounty, and your ability to build relationships with the people of Blomkast is a huge part of the game. It cannot be overstated that the narrative aspects of Discounty are focused on working with those around you, resolving problems for suppliers, reassuring customers, and acknowledging your business's impact on the local economy and ecology. Now, you are spared some of the more tedious survival aspects that could have been introduced. You don't need to eat, drink or pee, but you do need to make sure that you are in the shop on time and at home by midnight, or there will be consequences. You are very human, and likewise your interactions with your employees are very human too. The people you work with, whether staff, supplier or service provider, all have names, personalities, goals and missions, and they exist as actual characters in the overarching narrative, building a complex web of relationships that reinforce how each element affects the other. Decisions taken by Teller during the course of the game lead to blackmail, protests and investigations. There are consequences for rampant capitalism, and these are felt by the inhabitants of Blomkast. Building your understanding of the ways that you can impact the town is paramount to the narrative arc of Discounty. So what about Supermarket Simulator, you ask? Well, Supermarket Simulator is a first-person game, as most simulator games seem to be these days. So from a conceptual point of view, you are literally the main character. I say this because you have zero fictional facade, no character name and no visual avatar at any stage, so one can only assume that you are the supermarket owner. However, there is a weird dissociation because you don't really need to handle any of the human needs at any point. There is no socialising, no eating, no toilet visits, no home management, no upgrading clothing. There is nothing in the game that doesn't relate to your function. And that's the moment it clicks, isn't it? We've already discussed how Supermarket Simulator is obsessed with functionality and how it treats your staff as expressionless voids that exist purely to fulfill a role. A labour bot that you can hire, fire and exploit with zero regard for the impact on them. And it would appear that this design philosophy extends to the player too. You have no purpose, no existence beyond your role as shop manager. You have no value, no personality and no visible impact on the world beyond your store. So in the end, we are just as hollow, expressionless and exploited as the staff in our shop. We too are here to perform our labour, dancing a nihilistic dance of obligation for the benefit those we will never see and can never understand. Yeah, we're going to need to deep clean aisle 6. I mean, they have really... Hello again! You know, when you really think about it, the purpose of a supermarket is a very simple thing, isn't it? It's a means for getting food from the farms and factories to the people that need it. That's it. Discounty and Supermarket Simulator are two very different games based around this oh-so-essential service that the vast majority of us rely on. They provide a way for us to demonstrate how different ideologies can view this same function. I doubt Supermarket Simulator was designed to be a very free market orientated view on food distribution, in much the same way that Discounty probably didn't intend to demonstrate some of the values of anarcho-syndicalism. And yet, they do kind of end up there, don't they? The priorities you build into your game will reflect your own views, and when you update a game to include a baseball bat for hitting shoplifters before you add named employees, for example, that is an interesting thing to nerds like me. For what it's worth, both of these games are a good time, and my aspersions as to their intentions are based on my interpretation, and should not be seen as an outright criticism or pass for either developer. That is a different kind of video, but I just wanted to voice the thoughts I was having as I moved between these two gaming experiences. Have you played either game, or both? What did you think? What was your overriding experience? What other supermarket-based games would add to this conversation? Or are there other genres we should look at in a similar way? Get in them comments. Let me know. Oh Jesus, they are just smearing that everywhere. I need to go and deal with that. See yourselves out, won't you? Firstly, thanks go to you for watching this far into a YouTube video. You are one of the hallowed few, and I tip my imaginary hat to you. If you have a few seconds, please consider liking this video and leaving a comment, as this helps me out with convincing the YouTube algorithm to show my videos to more people, and this would make me eternally grateful. Thanks also go to Mrs. InsideLeft for their patient support, along with the setup and scripting, to Adventsong and Robert Gordon for the use of their music, to the WeCreateTogether crew for their constant motivation and advice, and of course to the developers of both games in this video. Thanks again for watching. Be safe, be brave and be kind, comrades. I shall see you soon.